ladies and gentlemen, Ericka, come back in the show. I want to introduce to you Kash Patel, who has a laundry list. He was National Security Council, worked, DNI. You were chief of staff for Secretary of Defense, and we have Matthew Taylor, award-winning director, producer, produced Government Gangsters, Clinton Cash. Guys, thank you for the show. Your timing is great because you wanted an example of the deep state, the whole selection process. Nancy Pelosi, welcome to the show of the people. Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. I want to dive right into this. Is Nancy Pelosi part of the deep state? She must be, right? I mean, I know you named names in the book, but let's go for it.
Take it away, Matthew.
I mean,
wait. You're not punting to him, are you?
Oh yeah, on this one I am.
Yeah, it's the apex predator of the Democratic Party. I mean,
yeah,
Pelosi, is one of the greatest politicians of American history, and how she's able to maneuver and manipulate and become a multi-millionaire, and that's a small number. It's much larger than you can imagine. And so she is a very, very skilled political animal. She gets what she wants. She's positioned things all over the government. So yeah, I would say that when it comes to the government gangster, she's a high up Don. She may not be the top, but there are times where she's been the top. I mean, look at her ability to become speaker so many times. You have to admit, it's very impressive. And as a political opponent, I respect her cunning and capabilities.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, government gangsters aren't people who are unsuccessful. It's dismissive to label them as such because we disagree with their politics. That's separate and apart from the reason I dislike Nancy Pelosi. I dislike her because she represents everything that's bad with Washington, D.C. Whether she's in leadership or anointing the next leadership or eviscerating the Democratic process for the Democratic Party and throwing out 14 million votes and anointing Kamala Harris to be the president, she is always right there, no degrees of separation from what is going on in the powerhouse of Washington. And what is she, like 80 something? And they're making fun of us for having octogenarians, but she will not go away. I mean, she's not Speaker of the House anymore, and she might be more powerful now than she ever has been. She just remade the political presidential landscape with the sitting president of the United States, sidelined him and handpicked his successor. I mean, literally. And you got to be kidding me if you don't think she didn't pick the vice president of the United States. And that's what embodies the government gangster.
Didn't they make changes to the 25th Amendment, right before she was leaving her post? I remember there was some very little coverage of some changes. You can't
change an amendment like
that.
It wasn't like a change to the Constitution, but there was some change to the implementation. And Nancy was behind it. I don't know. I'm going to have to look into that.
You're probably talking about the application of the wording, and they look. That's one of the things, and you guys, I'd love both of you, either Kash or Matthew, to weigh in this, because what they do is they take the words that are already there and they reapply them. Let's look at the case against Trump in New York, right? They took a federal law, right? That had been, I believe, and Kash, you're an attorney. Correct me if I'm wrong. The federal law had expired. And the federal and the DOJ didn't feel it rose to that level anyways, but they took the law, they added something, I forget what they added to it in terms of the charges, and then they sort of reopened it in New York on a state level on a felony basis, right? I mean, isn't that what they're doing?
I mean, look, the weapon of choice for these government gangsters is a two-tier system of justice. And that is what the deep state is all about. Whether it's federal court, state court, civil court, criminal court, you don't have to be like me, a former national security prosecutor or federal public defender. I went up there, I sat with the president during his trial, and I watched this mockery of justice. And I looked to the right and left of me, and no one in that courtroom, if they were willing to tell the truth, would say that was a serious practice of the judicial law of the Constitution. But everyone in that courtroom knew Donald Trump was getting convicted. The second he walked in there, they didn't care about the law. They also don't care about the appeal. They got what they wanted. Donald Trump sidelined from the campaign by making up fictitious legal charges. And that's not me saying it. That's Democratic constitutional scholars saying it. And so what they did was they took out his ability to campaign, took out his ability to fundraise, and then labeled him falsely and unconstitutionally a convicted felon, which they will trumpet around like Kamala Harris and her vice president candidate are doing right now, that they're up against, quote unquote, a criminal. It's the label they wanted. And unless everyday America wakes up and stops antagonizing just the Harris and the VP pick, that's not what we can do alone to win. We've got to make sure that Trump's message is out there because it's far superior.
Mm.
So who is there a head of the snake? That's always the question. I think most
Yeah,
people in
Matthew
America
Teller's
are
the head of the
reasonable.
state.
I meant the other snake. Look, I think the average American right now, if they're reasonably objective, would not trust Washington. Would agree there is a deep state, an administrative state, and that it's not really left or right, but top versus bottom, right? Sort of the power elite. But the question is, because you referenced Nancy Pelosi, and I would say it goes back to Obama, who, by the way, is still in Washington and still, I think, involved in this process, if not the head of the snake. But my question is there a head of the snake? And how do you, because the people aren't going to rise up unless, of course, we're Venezuela. We become Venezuela.
I mean, in my opinion, and I think like Kash states it exceptionally in his book, Government Gangsters, it is like Medusa or Hydra. But I think you can also kind of separate a little bit. There's the party and then there's the deep state as well. And the deep state can actually encompasses both parties because a lot of these people have been bouncing around between Democrats and Republicans. I think if you're talking just about the Democratic Party, I think Barack Obama still has an extreme stranglehold on the party. OFA took over the DNC, I think back in 2012 and rolled it in together. He still controls all the donors. He still controls all the money. He still controls basically everything. So I think if you're looking at the party, Obama still has a massive, massive amount of control. If you're looking at the deep state, that's all kind of rolled into that, but it covers everybody on all sides, because again, a lot of these people were appointed by Bush. A lot of them were appointed by Obama, and of course, Kash had been in government for 13 years. He's seen all these people come through the system, and they're supposed to just do their job, but there's no accountability except to themselves. And, and it skews a lot of it, I think, to the left, especially when your opponent is someone like Donald Trump, who, look, I think it's really important to understand that most presidents come into office being like, oh, these tools are great. This FBI and the CIA, I can get things done with them. He came in from day one saying, nah, we're going to drain the swamp. So he was counter to all these previous presidents and how they wanted to use these tools, going all the way back to Lyndon B. Johnson, to Kennedy. They all got along with these tools, and at some point, sometimes these tools turned against them. With Nixon and some of these other folks. But he, from day one, Donald Trump said, "No, I'm not going to use these tools. I don't need these tools. I'm going to run a very different set of ideas," and that was a threat from day one. And so they had to do what they had to do, and they did it. And guess what? I think they lost in a number of these things thanks to people like Kash Patel, who fought the deep state and exposed a lot of these things.
You make a good point, Matthew. So, Kash, here's my question on the inside. See, I trace a lot of this, and I grew up in a very political family. I trace a lot of this to sort of let's call it the Arkansas effect, right? Because if I look back, to me, it didn't start with Obama. It started with the Clintons. Now, I'm not blaming the Clintons. I mean, it was happening right in front of us, and we did nothing about it. And we ceded ground, not only in government, but in media, in entertainment, in education. I think it's a multifaceted thing. But what's the most egregious example of just outrageous thing from your 13 years in government? You don't have to name names, but just some of the things that you saw that just made you come to this realization.
Well, the good thing for your viewers is Matthew put it on screen. So just watch the film and then you don't have to listen to me anymore. But if you still want to listen to me blather on, I will disagree with you slightly when I agree that the Clintons and the Arkansas clan is part of the deep state. But I think the deep state started when Ike Eisenhower called out the defense industrial complex in the 50s. And he said, if we don't control this animal, it is going to usurp the powers of government. And not just the defense industrial complex, but everything a part of it. How government figures want to go in and out of Washington, D.C., and they want to get their golden parachute. And they want to go work on this private company or that board and come back and get rewarded for their corrupt activities in government instead of serving the people. So over those last 50, 60 years, we've encapsulated all of it in Government Gangsters, the film. and stitch together how basically you just move people in and out. It's not one face. It's not Democrat or Republican. And they're repeating the same playbook just with upgraded technology. So as bad as Russiagate was, and as horrible as it was for a political opponent to go overseas and purchase bogus intel and feed it to the FBI, then lie to a federal court to illegally surveil a presidential candidate, as bad as that was, they did it again with 51 Intel letter. They did it again with the insurrection narrative, which was never constitutionally grounded. They did it again with whatever version of Get Trump they're doing now, like, oh, we're going to give illegal aliens the right to vote. It's totally illegal, but they're going to do it anyway because they don't care. Now it's so in your face. At least with Russiagate, they hit it. They said everything's classified. You can't see anything. You guys aren't smart enough to look at this information. Only the criminals in government can do it. And now they're just like, whatever, here it is. You guys are so feeble. You guys can't get your act together that we're just going to mow the lawn with you. And rig another presidential election. And that's the wake-up call for everyday Americans. I'm not saying we get over it, but I'm just saying we can command a better audience.
I love it. Let's watch the trailer a little bit, and for the audience, for everybody watching, go to warroom.film. Warroom.film. You can rent it, you can buy it. It's excellent. I was fortunate enough to see the premiere here in Austin, Texas a few weeks ago, and so I was super excited to share this with you guys.
Government gangsters are the group of individuals, career bureaucrats, who have been installed by what we call the deep state into every agency and department in the United States government. Had Donald Trump not won in 2016, he would not have exposed the flank of the deep state and their weapon of choice, the two-tier system of justice. From Russiagate, to Hunter Biden's laptop, to Joe Biden's classified documents case, to January 6th, to the 51 Intel letter and everything in between. We would never have learned that. These people are dangerous and vindictive, learning from their mistakes and perfecting ways to hide their corruption.
It is finally time for a straightforward assessment of the state of our nation.
So good, you guys. If you have been watching all of the nonsense that has been happening in our country for the last, I don't know, for a long time, but especially the whole Russiagate nonsense, this explains from start to finish kind of how it all happens. You hear all the players. And so when you're at Thanksgiving, before that, you guys, this will help arm you to have those coffee table, dinner table conversations with your friends and family, because you don't want to be on the sidelines this year. You don't want to be up in the stands, up in the bleachers, complaining about how things are. You want to take action and do something about it. And this film will help you. You guys did such a good job. I love the edit. I was telling Matthew, as a film person, I was really impressed with the editing. You made a documentary.
Yeah, that was all me.
Exciting.
That wasn't Matthew. I did all the Those guys were. Let me tell you, those guys are talented. And what the audience doesn't know is they freaking did this in 100 days. They made a film. They edited it. They shot in multiple locations, and they literally finished it with Bannon when he was walking into federal prison. It's unbelievable feat what these guys did.
That is wild. Yeah, that is 6 weeks finish time is outrageous. It is.
And Matthew, now we know why you prefer to give speeches now rather than make film, because the stress level must have been off the charts.
Yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of pressure films, but this one was definitely one of the hardest ones. But it's interesting because it's also hard because when you really dig into this information that Kash has in his book, it feels hopeless in some ways. But again, as I had said in our premiere, I think this is the manual of how you can break these people, because he did it. He stopped them, he exposed them. And the fight is not just Kash alone. As he says at the end of the film, everybody needs to be activated. Everybody needs to get in the mission. You don't have to put up with this. You don't have to be a victim to the deep state with unlimited power, unlimited reach, and unlimited money. You can beat them. It's in the movie how to do it. And this is your time. We have less than 100 days till the election, and this is it. So watch the movie and learn from what Kash did, and take it to your communities, into your homes, and beat these guys.
Yes, and vote Kash Patel for CIA director.
Got my vote.
Hey, I said AG.
And by the way,
but
it's a presidential appointment, right? PASC, right? But that's okay. Look, John Brennan. I mean, how do you put an avowed communist basically as the head of the Central Intelligence Agency? If there is one head of one appointment, I think Clapper's just a stooge. He's a smart stooge, but I think he's a stooge. I think that the other one is malevolent to me, but that's just my opinion. I have a question for you, Kash. So Donald Trump, let's project Donald Trump wins in November, right? And wants to, drain the swamp. And I would argue that one of the problems that he had the first time around in 2016 was that he didn't really drain the swamp enough. And some of the people he appointed that he thought would have been sort of with him on this, and let's call it the Republican establishment, really were working against him, right? So now, and then you have obviously the fact that a lot of the government employees, all the government employees are unionized. How do you go in and just start firing everybody? And obviously they'll take you to court. I mean, this would, not saying you shouldn't do it, but how does that play itself out really in real terms?
You do what the duly elected commander-in-chief tells you to do. If he tells you to fire people, you fire people. It's a private business just the same. You wouldn't let people who break the law, break the rules, steal money, steal from you, corrupt your enterprise to continue working for you. You wouldn't give them a reward. And so this is
promotion.
It's not so much for me about, looking after the win. Right now, we got to look at how to win. And what we have to do is message this film out there. And the problem you highlighted is interlaced throughout this movie. Who's going to step up now that we've identified this amorphous deep state? And the great news is the bench totally exists. It's totally there. I know him, Matthew knows him. We all know great people who can step up to serve. That's the good news, right? The hard part is convincing Americans, showing them the truth that this deep state actually exists. It's not a right-wing conspiracy. It's not a mistake that Brennan and Clapper are both on the movie poster for Government Gangsters. There's only 8 people on there. We could have put 80. But these were some of the most devious criminal minds who weaponized intel, law enforcement, and defense for political purposes. And like you said earlier, you would think, in America, that can't happen. And that was part of the tussle in the first Trump administration. You can't blame a business guy for coming in who's never been in politics to say, well, I should be able to trust my CIA guy, my attorney general, my FBI director. I shouldn't come to the presidency and tell me, my FBI director just lied to me and they lied to a federal court. My attorney general just buried evidence of innocence involving my presidential campaign. I mean, this is like sci-fi, right?
Coup, really? Like
to prove it.
He entered the presidency under a coup, essentially. I mean, what else would you call that?
So I think everyone learned. It's not just whether Donald Trump learned. I mean, I'll let him speak for himself, but I think everyone learned that, okay, we put a little too much faith in the system. The system took advantage of it. And here's why. Here is like sort of the final piece of Government Gangsters, the film and the book. It's really simple. Trump is going to wipe them out if he wins. That's why they are terrified. Not just Democrats, but Rhino Republicans like Paul Ryan, like Bill Barr, like Gina Haspel, like Rod Rosenstein, like James Comey, like Andy McCabe and Peter Strzok and the Lovebirds, who just got millions of dollars from.
Oh my God, there's settlements. I'm so mad.
Which, by the way, that also explains why they just tried to take him out, right? I mean, let's be honest about it, right?
So
anyone who thinks that
things together. And what government needs is accountability inwards. And that's what Donald Trump brought to DC. He exposed them. He started the accountability. And yes, it's frustrating that not everyone has been held accountable. But what these government gangsters know is that if he wins again, it's over for them. Their 60-year run is over and they are freaking out.
Well, unfortunately, what else is over is our time for your interview tonight, you guys. I want to honor your time. I know you have to get going because warroom.film is blowing up. I know you guys are doing press releases. You're out there talking to people. So everybody watching, warroom.film. Now, okay, I don't have it handy. Just holler out your Instagram, Matthew.
Go.
M.A. Taylor. That's my Instagram. That's where I'm posting all sorts of fun stuff. There's some behind the scenes pictures.
M.A. Taylor?
M.A. Taylor. And it's the
Taylor.
only one, you guys. He's only on Instagram. And then Kash, you're only on Truth Social, right?
Yep. At Kash.
What is your Truth handle? I'm trying to remember it.
At Kash. Really
At
confusing.
Kash. At Kash. Okay, you guys. So fun.
Thank you so much. for
Hard to
having me
figure
on.
out.
You guys
Yes.
Thank you.
Come on again
Warroom.film.
and stay
Go
longer.
rent
We
it.
have more to talk about.
We'll
as
come
many
back.
times as
Yes.
you like. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.